The Lord be with you and with your spirit. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to John. Jesus went to the Mount of Olives, but early in the morning he arrived again in the temple area, and all the people started coming to him, and he sat down and taught them. Then the scribes and the Pharisees brought a woman who had been caught in adultery and made her stand in the middle. Now, in the law, Moses commanded us to stone such women. So what do you say? They said this to test him, so that they could have some charge to bring against him. Jesus bent down and began to write on the ground with his finger. But when they continued asking him, he straightened up and said to them, "Let the one among you who is without sin be the first to throw a stone at her." Again, he bent down and wrote on the ground. And in response, they went away one by one, beginning with the elders. So he was left alone with the woman before him. Then Jesus straightened up and said to her, "Woman, where are they? Has no one condemned you?" She replied, "No one, sir." Then Jesus said, "Neither do I condemn you. Go, and from now on do not sin anymore." The Gospel of the Lord. Today we're celebrating the fifth Monday of the season of Lent. And as we know, Lent is a time to improve ourselves, to change for the better, to transform how we live our lives. It's not just a time to give things up, but it's a time to improve ourselves, to improve our relationship with God and with our neighbor. And we're called not to give up hope, not to be frustrated, but to believe in God's mercy. In today's gospel, we see once again Jesus is having difficulty with the scribes and the Pharisees. They're trying to back Jesus into a corner to make him look bad. They're not really interested in fulfilling the law or seeing that the law is followed. Because if they were, they would have also had the man who was caught in adultery with the woman, because he too was subject to death according to the law of Moses. But they didn't. They only had the woman. And the law said that they should be stoned. So they thought that if Jesus answered yes, he'd be in trouble with the Romans because he was taking over the ability to condemn someone to death. And also he would be in conflict with his own teaching of love and mercy. And at the same time, if he said no, he would lose followers with the people because he would not be following Moses' commands. And what was Jesus' response? He said nothing. He bent down and wrote in the dust with his finger. And we don't know what he wrote. But we can imagine. If we use our imagination, we can think that maybe he was writing the sins of those who were accusing the woman. And so when they continued to question him, he asked them, "Who among you is without sin? He can cast the first stone." And slowly they all walked away. What that means for us, the message that we receive from this gospel passage today, is that God is a forgiving God. It's God's forgiveness and his mercy that gives us the path to move forward and the grace to move forward. And Jesus, in forgiving the woman, showed no limits to the mercy of God. There was simply boundless compassion and grace being offered by Jesus, by God, to all those who were sinners. And we're all sinners. As Pope Francis has said, I am a sinner, we are all sinners. And so, just as Jesus treated the woman with respect and generosity, we need to remember and realize he will do the same for us. All we need to do is be open to God's grace, open to his mercy, and be willing to accept that mercy, not to lock ourselves away and turn inward and think that things are hopeless, but open ourselves and accept God's mercy. So when Jesus says, "Go and sin no more," he's offering the woman words of encouragement, a promise that Jesus will be with her and guide her, just as he will be with us. We've all received that promise that God will be with us and not abandon us. Jesus is not condoning sin. He's not absolving her from the responsibility to be responsible for her actions. But he's offering her mercy, not condemnation. He's not exonerating her until she asks for mercy. And so as we continue with the season of Lent, we ourselves need to be open to God's mercy, willing to accept it, and do all we can to bring that mercy into the world.